Welcome, everyone. We're going to give folks a couple of minutes to join. So please sit tight. We really appreciate you being here today. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give folks a minute or so to join, and then we'll get started. All right, great. Let's do this. Welcome, everyone, to the Executives Club of Chicago Signature Series event. I'm Amy Littleton, president of Stretch PR, and today our topic is fractional business innovation and emerging trends for scaling companies. As businesses seek growth, the question of who, when, and how to hire becomes a major challenge. The talent needed to scale and support a business's growth at various inflection points changes over time. That's when today's leaders often consider an emerging trend, fractional business operations. The fractional business services segment has been booming over the past few years, thanks in large part to the innovators who have joined me today. We're going to start our conversation first by talking about the business side of things, and then we're going to turn our attention to the consulting side of things, so from businesses to individuals. So let's get started with introductions. I'd first like to introduce Mary Cook, market leader, senior managing partner at Korn Ferry. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Amy. Glad to be here.
And Mary, will you give me just a minute of your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am the market leader for the Midwest and Chicago area for what is now Korn Ferry's interim finance and accounting practice. Korn Ferry entered the interim market over the last 4 or 5 years, in addition to the 4 or 5 other large offerings that Korn Ferry brings to the table around executive search, advisory, digital, et cetera. Because honestly of what you'll hear a lot more of today around the growing trend around interim, of which includes fractional. So within the interim space, we focus on finance and accounting, we focus on HR, IT and risk, supply chain and operations, and full C-suite offerings. So glad to be here.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Jessica Fairchild. She's partner of Croak, Fairchild, Duarte, and Barris.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks, Amy. Nice to see everybody. As you mentioned, I'm Jessica Fairchild. I'm a founder and a partner at the law firm Croak, Fairchild, Duarte, and Barris. We are a full service law firm, and some of our offerings have included fractional and interim GC work, which I look forward to talking about today. We're headquartered in Chicago, but we have attorneys now kind of around the country in about 18 states. So look forward to this conversation and good to be here.
Thank you. And last but not least, John Frank, CEO of Third Road Management.
Thanks, Amy. Glad to be here and grateful for everybody for tuning in. As you mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Third Road Management. We are celebrating our 10th legal year in business here in 2025, which we're really excited about. And I started doing this line of work on the side prior to that for a couple of years prior. But our business consists of 2 primary services. The first is fractional CFO work. That's what I started doing at the commencement of Third Road Management. And to complement that, we also offer accounting services. So that's how our business operates. Currently based here in Chicago. The lion's share of our employees are here in Chicago, and our team is 30 plus members and growing seemingly every week. So we're excited to be part of that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's dig in. So I'd first like to start with each panelist describing your position on fractional solutions, as you know a lot about this and have seen the changes, and how that's coming to life for your company and your clients. Let's start with you, Mary.
Sure. So within my world, we look at fractional, as I mentioned, as a greater part of interim, and really a two-focus aspect, right? One, when it is on businesses and how we can support businesses and our clients. The other is on consultants and how fractional or interim can be a career for them. I know we're focusing the first part of this conversation on the business side of it. And so what we talk the most with our clients about is really what makes the most sense for where they are in their growth journey, in terms of how they can best serve their needs with an interim or a fractional employee, which can be cost. A lot of times there's cost sensitivity. It can be expertise for a specific need. It can be just the stage that they're in terms of the amount of support that they need for their business at that time. And we have the flexibility to support on all fronts.
Awesome. How about you, John?
Yeah, I appreciate this being the first question that we're all kind of tuning in on, because I think that the definition is evolving over the course of time. This is kind of a new market. Especially early on when I started doing this line of work, it was easier to describe it as what it wasn't. In our definition, and things like, no, we're not a search firm. We're not attempt to hire firm. We actually don't say that we do interim CFO work here at Third Road Management. We're not hired to do projects, and we're not an outsourced accounting group. Now, Third Road Management does that, but when we're talking specifically about fractional CFO work, it was easier to put in a box as what it wasn't. But some things that we do think that it is a long-term alternative solution for businesses that don't yet need a full-time CFO. And that those CFOs really should be focused on strategy, finance, operations. A good way that we always talk about it is, hey, the books are done, and now what, right? Like, how are we going to interpret the results and use them to make an impact on decision-making in the business? And then the last thing is that, we really strongly emphasize that we want to be an integrated part of your team. We do not want to be an arm's length sort of transactional approach. We're just not there 5 days a week. Maybe we're there a day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever works best for that client. But we definitely want to be part of the team. We want to have an office in their office. We want to get invited to the holiday party, and all those types of things.
And Jessica, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think we're maybe in a unique position because, we've been a growing firm for the last 5 years, and we've grown a lot, and we've really relied on fractional resources to help us grow. So namely and specifically, we have a fractional CFO that we work with. We've worked with them the last 2 years. And in that growth, going from, a small number of employees to 150 or so, we've also relied on fractional work, both in the HR space and in the sort of marketing PR. And obviously for us, it was about a calculus of, what level are we at? What level of sophistication is our business at? What level of knowledge base do we need from the individuals, and how much work was there? Did we have enough work at the time to warrant, a full-time kind of in-office or available position? And we had to make that calculus, and that's evolved for us. We still are working with our fractional CFO firm, which is great. And that's evolving, how much work they're doing for us, how many hours. But like John mentioned and Mary mentioned, it's really like an embedded role where they are quite familiar with our company, our individuals, the people that work here, our goals, and very strategic in the role. I will say also, and I know we're going to come to this as we get on in the program, but we as a law firm, also offer, fractional services. So we see it also from the perspective of, general counsel, fractional GC work that we do for clients. And I think they're making the same calculus, which is, where are we in the life cycle of the company? What kind of knowledge base do we need now? Are we needing a full-time in-house general counsel, or can we rely on outside providers to bring the expertise and the knowledge and maybe cross-industry, cross-market practice? And so we think this is a great time to be having this conversation, because we're just seeing more and more interest in the fractional space, and we're certainly a consumer of fractional services as well.
So that really brings up the topic of what are the differences between a fractional employee, a full-time employee, or even a consultant? I'd like to hear from your perspective, John, what are the key differences there?
Um, well, I think in the case of a full-time employee, that's a little bit more, clear, in terms of what their role is within an organization. Our view is on the fractional side, we typically work with anywhere between 1 and 5 different clients at one point in time. Here, no more than 5 because we don't want their time and brain space to be too diluted. So that impacts how we do things. Like I said, we want to be a member of the team, but only there a portion of the time. I think that we've historically not used the word consultant in some of our messaging because for better or for worse, I've always felt like it invoked a little bit more scope of work. Here's a SOW, I'm going to do this for this period of time, and then we're going to be done. Whereas we've always had a continuous ongoing view of our relationships with our clients. Our contracts are evergreen in nature, but they have a short window in which somebody can cancel them too. We don't ask for any long-term commitments. Again, getting back to that feel of we want to feel like we're an employee of the company. But if we were a W-2 employee, obviously they would have the right to terminate if we're not doing our job right. So that's one way that we look at things.
So if companies are growing from small to medium to large, is this kind of an interim solution as they grow and scale, or do you see this as long-term?
I think the answer is both. What we always talk about is we want to be with our clients till they grow to a point where they really do need a full-time resource. And in fact, a lot of the times we actually help in the process of recruiting for that role. And then we'll actually do any sort of crossover training, access to things, handover of, documents and reports and things like that along the way.
Right.
I would say too, just to add, I think it depends on the role. I think that there can be opportunities for, one example could be you have a new up and coming CFO and they have a lot of potential, but they could use some coaching. You could hire a fractional resource to be, a part-time coach for them behind the scenes, to give them, advice, expertise, support that you might not be able to offer internally. So I think it really depends on the specific role, and the need case by case.
Yeah, I would also, if I could just jump in too, because I think that was great commentary, just from our perspective, we're constantly kind of evaluating that question, right? We've probably been asking more and more of our fractional CFO team as we've grown and the complexity has grown and they've been able to, they've got additional resources. They've been able to kind of grow with us, which has been fantastic. I do think there might be an inflection point, and I don't know when it would be, when, having an internal person, full-time on staff makes sense. But right now we really enjoy the fact that they're bringing, that outside perspective. They're seeing what other companies are doing. They're seeing industry trends, and we really love that they are, like looking around the corner for us. So I think it's important to kind of evaluate it on an ongoing basis. Where's the company going? Where's it heading? What makes sense? And just be open about that conversation. That's how we've sort of managed our, fractional relationship, and it's worked really well.
Yeah, Amy, if I'll jump on that too. I think there's qualitative and quantitative answers associated with this too. If you're looking at pure dollar signs, what we always sort of talk about is it's usually at about 3 days a week is the tipping point from a quantitative perspective. But from a qualitative perspective, there are a lot of other things. As Jessica pointed out, there's the ability to surge in staffing when you need a surge in staffing. You got a special project going on. Maybe somebody is pursuing a transaction or something like that they need some extra boots on the ground for a period of time, that a firm like ours or a fractional services firm in another industry perhaps can offer that type of thing, which I think is really important. The other thing that we always talk about is when you hire a firm, there's all the things that come with it too, right? There's leveraging everybody's collective expertise across the organization. If I haven't uniquely seen a problem that a specific client has encountered, somebody else from our team likely has, and I can piggyback off those resources internally.
We've talked a lot about the financial office. I think there's so many aspects of the business operation. I'd love to know from your perspective, Mary, what parts of the business operation do you really feel are ripe for fractional solutions today?
I think it depends on the company, right? But it's been a growing trend, right? Whether you call it fractional, whether you call it gig, right? The gig economy has grown over 60% in the last 5 years, right? And everything that you read is that, that's not stopping, right? And by 2029, could reach over 24 million workers, right? So I think that this is a continued conversation, and it, to your point, expands beyond, just the CFO realm, right? Or, to some extent, both you and Jessica offer fractional support, in both of your businesses as well, right? So depending on how narrow or broad you are with the definition, really multiple areas of operation, depending on the need, depending on the in-house expertise versus, need to go outside for that expertise, have the opportunity to support those needs in a fractional way. It's really about being as creative and open-minded, as you can be within your company.
Yeah, I would just add too, we're seeing more and more of the professionals interested in the fractional space, right? You've got folks who have traditionally been with one company for a career or a long time. They're jumping out, they're trying to join firms like ours that offers fractional GC work, and John's and the CFO side, and work with Mary to find fractional opportunities, because there's a lot of benefits from a lifestyle, and just, it can check a lot of boxes at different points in your career. I just think we're getting calls from clients more and more now, just counseling them through. They're maybe making their first fractional hires, and they want to talk about, well, what does this mean? And can we do this? Can we not? How do we think about this? So I think it's also being driven by the individual, the provider side, the professional who's saying, maybe I don't want to be with one, company moving up the ranks my whole career. I'd like to be outside helping multiple companies, working with those who are growing and changing. So I think it's really attractive. And then I think that's opened up more and more lanes for that type of work, as Mary was saying.
Yeah, and I would just, I think the way that we view, I'm going to start with the CFO side, but I'm going to bridge it to the other areas. We very much view a good CFO, if you think about a hub and spoke type model, all the spokes have dollar signs that are attached to it, right? And they branch off into marketing and IT and operations and sales and shipping and logistics and all those different areas of the business, right? And a good CFO's job is to allocate those dollars in as efficient way as we possibly can to make the wheel go as fast as we can make it go, right? So when you look at those respective areas of the business, let's say IT, right? Most people are aware of a managed service model in IT, outsourced IT. You have a help desk, whatever, which I think is very efficient for most small to mid-sized businesses. But when that business is ready to level up its tech stack, that managed IT provider is not necessarily the solution. And the solution is a fractional CTO, and somebody that can look at the company's entire tech stack and put it together in a way that helps that side of the business go. And I think that would apply to marketing and all those other areas, is like when you need an expert, right? When you need an expert in a specific area of the business, I think taking the step towards a fractional model is the way to go.
That really leads us into the next question, which is about how fractional services can help scale a business. Would love to know if you have any tangible examples of how fractional services can really help with that scale, getting to what you were just talking about, John.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that you have we always talk about it in the 3 Fs, right? So you have a finite number of dollars, and with those, you're looking to do a finite number of skills, and then you have a finite talent pool with which to do that. And I think what gets tricky is when you have let's say you have a CFO, right? You with as many dollars as you can, like, hey, I can go hire a CFO. Well, the bookkeeping and day-to-day journal entries and the payroll and stuff like that need to be done, right? In this case, you wouldn't, go into a knife fight with the gun. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need a full-time CFO to do that, work on the bookkeeping side of the equation. Vice versa, it's very hard to get, let's say, a early career bookkeeper to do CFO level thinking and strategic work, right? And so the way that we like to think about it is this fractional model. You can kind of combine things to get the best of all worlds. Like in our case at Third Road, that's why we have fractional CFOs, controllers, and accountants on our team. Because in some cases, we're the entire finance and accounting department for our clients, right? And so I think from a tangible example, I think people can probably empathize and understand that, hey, if I've got a finite pool of dollars to spend, I might as well get the right person in the right seat to do the right task.
I agree. I think it offers specialized expertise, on, I'll call it part-time, right? And any amount of time less than full basis, to allow a company to customize what they need at that time.
Great. And then Jessica, we talked a little bit on our pre-call about how using the fractional services model can speed up innovation. Can you talk a little bit about that from the service perspective and utilization as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I really do think, what we're envisioning and what we're talking about fractional is experienced, knowledgeable, often able to cut across industries or really see ahead in market practices. And, both in our company and what we do for clients, I think bringing that broad knowledge base, in, and somebody who is seeing trends and can bring trends to a company, obviously at a smaller size, it's hard to afford often the resources that are as experienced and knowledgeable, and really like on the cutting edge, right? What we rely on, we do rely on our outside fractional providers to be cutting edge. We want them to be bringing the best technology and resources to the business for their services. And so I think it is really, as a company that's grown quite a bit, it's allowed us to really level up and have, in our case, I've referred to it a few times, the CFO role be a sophisticated CFO role. That's allowed us to grow, right? We had a controller who, it was a great controller. That was the role that person was designed for. Trying to say, hey, now could you step into the CFO role? Was not something that could happen, and we had to look outside. But we really found a firm that, kind of brought all aspects, knowledge, team, and that's allowed us to scale, right? Without that resource, without a knowledgeable, CFO thinking ahead, doing the cash management, obviously making sure our systems, et cetera, were ready, we would not have been able to grow. It would have been a real thorn in our side. And, if I could just say on the flip side, because we are lawyers, we serve that role for a lot of our clients that are growing, are sophisticated, we're in a environment where legal is always a topic. If you're a growing company, how do you tackle legal? And so we, as a firm that offers fractional, are able to come in as often the only lawyer, or maybe sitting over, kind of a day-to-day more junior lawyer, and really, put people in that role that have worked with multiple companies, have been in different industries, have been with companies that have scaled and grown. So we kind of understand the path. And, I think should those resources not be available, I think it would be a real challenge for companies this day and age. And so this whole model, I think, both from the service provider side and the side that's utilizing them, is really allowing companies to grow faster, to do it in a more managed way from a cost perspective, and get a broader expertise in the door than they might otherwise if they had, just to hire a full-time senior resource.
Yeah, Amy.
So when do they know?
When do they know to hire to bring on a fractional person? I think I think it's a bit of a cost benefit analysis, and I do think it's a moving target. As we talked about, John made a lot of great points about utilization, not just from an hours standpoint too. You had a sort of cutoff of 3 days a week. I'm not sure we're as regimented as that. I think it's a give and take and it's sort of a feeling out. I think you look at your resource and say, am I getting the insight and the knowledge and the attention and the sort of the critical thinking that I need, and if that resource is able to offer that as you grow, great. If you're finding that they're not offering those insights, then it's probably, time to think about a different resource. Maybe that's a different fractional resource, or maybe that's, it's time to bring somebody, in-house full time. So I feel like for us, it's when we're on the side of consuming, it's sort of just been a constant analysis. Are we where we need to be? Are we getting the advice we need, and the insight? And if that ever were to not happen, I think from our perspective, we would make a change at that point.
I would just mention too that I think some of it is a conscious choice for the company. We have some clients that utilize, let's say, 15-20% of their accounting and finance teams with interim resources, because it allows them the flexibility to trade in and trade out resources that have specialized knowledge, skills, expertise, and provide advisory services that just aren't what that company wants to be known for and, own themselves. So, it can be, creative to that extent as well.
Yeah, I was just going to hit on, the finite talent pool thing. And this is a little bit more, not as, obvious kind of thing. But, if you think about it, and I'll use marketing as an example, but let's say there's an extremely talented marketing person that's done a lot of, great big agency work or something like that, right? And there's a $50 million manufacturing firm that wants to hire a CMO, right? I think the reality is that's a hard thing to do for somebody to go work full time for a smaller business. So I think the way to effectuate that, right, is if they're a fractional model, right? What we found is that a lot of people really love working for small to mid-sized businesses. It's easy to see the fruit of their labor. It's not like going to work at a gigantic firm where, you feel like, did I really do anything today? So it's really nice to see the fruit of their labor, but they can work with multiple clients at the same time. I think the reality is it's a harder sell to get that talent pool to want to work at, a much smaller organization on a full-time basis.
Makes sense. All right, well, are there any other points you'd like to make from the business side of things before we transition over to the consultant side?
I guess I just say, one of the talk points that, we would come up against in conversations with prospective new clients would be like, can I afford this, right? And, I know it's a little bit of, a saying, so to speak, but like, can you not afford it would be my question. Like in the case of fractional legal advice, like think of all the risk you're putting yourself up against, right? Potentially if you don't have sound legal counsel, right? Or good financial counsel or whatever. The other thing would be that I think it pays for itself pretty quickly. Whether it's peace of mind at night, knowing that all your legal matters are good, or you have a great marketing plan and, the leads start coming in, or, the financial piece and insights you get. I really do think that the payback quantitatively and qualitatively are there.
Yeah, I would say, I think that was a great comment. I think just thinking about the legal services space for a moment, when we do those fractional arrangements, they're often very anchored for a specific number of hours and a specific cost. And for companies that are growing, locking in that cost and knowing kind of month to month that this is what it's going to look like, no, I don't have somebody, in-house, but I know who I'm going to call. I know that we have a budget and it's going to be this much a month and it's going to be regular. And I know I can get the experts on the phone that I need, right? They know my business. We've invested both ways in getting to know the business and getting to know each other. That's valuable, right? Because legal is one of those areas where spend can fluctuate, and it can fluctuate quickly. And that could really be, for growing businesses, that could be really a difficult place. So trying to find where we do it on the fractional side, kind of a set number of hours, a set number of, set cost, I think is really valuable for companies kind of locking that in. And another reason that, we've seen interest in the fractional work on the legal side.
Yeah. And I would just add too that just like so many companies today are rethinking work around AI, right? It really is consistent with rethinking in general our full-time versus fractional resources and what makes the most sense for our businesses when, right? These are shifts that are reshaping our work lives, and it's really an invitation to rethink, retrain, reimagine what we can, as individuals and organizations do, to best suit our business.
Great. Well, with that, we'll talk about the individual side of things. And Mary, I'm going to start with you. Makes the most sense. Fractional services and company culture. Is there a lens on how these fractional workers blend into a company culture over time?
Yeah, I would say that, John touched on it when he was actually introducing his company, and I agree with what he said, right? We look at these as extensions of your work teams and your company, right? So when we're assessing candidates that can be part of a company, it's one of the maybe 10-point matching process, in addition to skills and abilities and categories and specializations. We also look at that culture piece and personality and fit and type of company and what the best match overall is going to be, because we really want somebody that can come in and truly become ingrained and be part of the organization. Maybe their employment type is different, 1099, W-2, et cetera. But from a day-to-day perspective, they are there to participate, add value, along with the rest of the organization.
How about you, Jessica? Any comments about culture?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think just generally as legal advisors, we really need to understand the full business picture, not the narrow question. We really need to get ingrained and embedded with the organization, the goals, the strategy, and how decisions are made, right? And who makes those decisions and what processes do we go through, really understanding all that. And so when we're in those roles, whether we're not in fractional or fractional, we really want to know the business. We want to understand its goals. We want to go deep. We spend a lot of time on the front end of a lot of new relationships, just getting to know the business. What are the goals? Where are we going? And how are we going to be helpful? Because, at the end of the day, as advisors, we're not there to put up roadblocks. We're there to help the company achieve its goals, the individuals achieve, whatever's on their plan for the year. So I think it is important that you have a fit as an advisor who counsels, CEOs and, business owners of all types. A fit is critical, right? If they don't enjoy talking to me and I don't enjoy talking to them, that's not going to be productive for anybody. So just making sure that people are brought in that really are ingrained in the team, which is the same points that John and Mary have made from the beginning, is going to create a much more successful relationship. And we've seen that be perfectly fine, even though we may sit remotely or not be physically there, because everybody's working from a lot of places these days. So just really the adoption of, hey, this is our team member attitude is what I think leads to success and can be very successful.
Yeah.
Anything to add, John?
Yeah, just culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? You hire, good people. It's really important. I think EQ is, critical for every professional, right? But, in particular at this C level, I think the expectation, is that you're going to be able to come in there. We're very focused on developing authentic relationships with our clients. We want to know their life story, what they like to do when they're not, doing the thing that they do for work, their family life, all those things, because, I think people turn to us as their trusted advisor, right? Similar to a lot of people, definitely on the legal side, people will do that. And you really have to know them and know what their goals are, not just for the business, but their goals in life, right? And be conscientious about helping them make decisions that steer them in the direction that they want and need to go.
What are some common misconceptions that individuals may have about the fractional services model? And I'll stick with you, John.
Yeah, I think the most common misconception, from my vantage point is I think that people think it's going to be easy. I think that, like whether we call it a lifestyle career or things like that. I mean, I caution people to have that expectation built in going into it, because what you'll find is if you're working with, say, 3 to 5 different clients at the same time, well, now instead of one boss you're reporting into, you have 3 to 5 different people that you're reporting into, right? And, just as a product of that, you have to be constantly thinking about them and developing new ideas and delivering value continuously. And, that if you don't like to do that, if you don't like to multitask, and are energized by new challenges constantly, I think that you'll find that it's not for you. I'm the person that loves being in the chaos. So it works for me. But I think that that's a pretty common misconception from our vantage point, or my vantage point specifically. So that's probably the biggest one. I don't know if the other panelists would like to chime in on that, Mary or Jessica.
Yeah, I agree. I would actually back up and, say, there are a lot of different models, and so if someone is thinking in general that they are interested in exploring fractional, right? That there are models like John's where you can hire and become, a full-time employee with the company who is assigned out on fractional projects, right? There are other models where you want to be your own boss and, you start your own company, LLC, et cetera, right? And you come in as, technically a contractor, could be full-time, could be in a fractional way, right? There are other models where you hire in as a W-2 employee because you care about benefits, right? Health benefits, but you are paid out on an hourly basis and paid when you are out on assignment. So I would have a think about, if it's something that you're considering, I would have a think about what matters to you in that regard, right? And where you have flexibility and where you don't. Do you want to do your own business development, right? To find your next project and opportunity? Is that something that you want to be provided for you? Do you want flexibility to say yes and no on what projects that you work on and what you don't? Or do you want to be assigned out and the next phone call that you get, that's where you have to go, right? There's a lot more to think about than it seems on the surface, right? That said, it is a trendy conversation, and one I'm having frequently, around the concept of is my career defined by the company and the title that I have, or is my career defined, more around what looks like a portfolio, where a portion of my time I'm spending, in an advisory role, a portion of my time I'm spending in a board position, a portion of my time I'm spending in some charitable way, right? There's a lot of conversation, but you really have to think about what you want to prioritize around how you set it all up.
I would just add to that. Those are fantastic comments. I think that when people hear fractional, they might think interim. I think that I know those are different words, but I think people are thinking, that's just a short-term role that I'm playing. And I think we've all talked about how, fractional can be a long-term play. Maybe it's not forever, but it certainly can be longer than a couple year opportunity. And so that is what I think. I think there's some confusion around that. We also hear outsourcing. Why is this outsourcing? Are we outsourcing? I think the idea is it's an opportunity that can give people a lot more control of the clients that we're working with, can also give them the opportunity to work with different businesses and see and get to know different people, different business models, maybe serve different industries, and that it doesn't have to be, just coming in for 30 days on an emergency basis. You can really make a career of doing this. And maybe it is working with, different companies over time and different roles, but it's still not meant to be a short term. I'm jumping off to here and I'm jumping here. You do really get a chance to know the companies well and really build camaraderie. If you're looking for companies that you're really aligned with and people you're aligned with, the opportunities are definitely there in the fractional space.
Yeah, Mary, I think you hit it on the head when you were talking about, you never stop, or you never can stop doing business networking, right? Because even if you were an independent doing fractional work, you have to have some sort of pipeline, even if one of your clients like let's say they sell their business or they, whatever happens where there's some natural end to your engagement there, you need something that's on the other side of it to plug in, that gap in your calendar and your income, obviously. So I think continuous networking is always the case. And then just anecdotally, there are situations where, there's, firms that you can join as a 1099 contractor, but that doesn't guarantee you work, right? It's if you're placed on an engagement, that you'll have work there and that's great. But it's not guaranteed. So I would just encourage everybody to, stay vigilant about, your networking, staying close to your friendships and your business relationships, as part of this effort, right?
That probably is one of the decision points people need to consider is, do they want to do new business development, or do they not want to do new business development? Because as an independent person, you've really got to bring that, how are you going to continue to fill the pipeline at the same time you just want to execute the work? Some people are better at it than others. So that leads me to my next question about what are the pros and cons for people in different points of their careers? Like, why would a CFO or a CHRO want to go the route of fractional services provider? And what are the benefits and drawbacks? Open it up to anyone.
I can start. We see a lot of different cases, right? I'll throw out some examples. We work with retired Big Four partners who don't want to hang up their hat, want the opportunity to do something different, don't necessarily need to do it for the money, but are interested in, continuing to, share their expertise, right? Barring any conflicts, it could be a great opportunity to, to participate in that advisory role, but not have to, do it through, starting their own new company, right? That's one example. In general, it does offer, some of the key considerations are work-life balance, the variety of projects, skill development. Maybe you want to be in a role that you've never actually had experience with before, and it's easier to do that, through a fractional project and getting some real-world expertise before you leap into something bigger, right? There's location flexibility. We touched on the entrepreneurial freedom. One thing that wasn't mentioned is, potentially there's higher earning potential. If something is, paid out an hourly basis, then you are technically paid for every hour you are actually working, rather than, a salary that then comes with plus 10 hours a week, right? So that's a consideration sometimes for people. And it can be, something different than, that full-time corporate employee, right? There might be no more, we want you to be ingrained in the business, right? But it might come with a reduced stress level because you don't have, some of the corporate aspects that you might have, if you were in a traditional corporate role.
That's a lot of pros. I don't know. I'm interested in the cons, but I don't have any obvious ones other than maybe what we touched on, which are, if you are building your own fractional firm, there's a lot of hustle. There's a lot of time involved in that. I would say, just looking at our company and how we've grown, and on the lawyer side, we've hired a lot of individuals who are in their second or third act. We have counsel at the firm who have come from, maybe even retired at a big law firm, or they have a part-time role at their own firm, but they want more, they're interested in more work, more workflow, broader client base. And we've been able to hire, attorneys, to help with our clients and our work on fairly like a fractional basis. I wouldn't have called it that, but it's a part-time role, more flexible. It had all the benefits that Mary outlined. And for us, they bring such great expertise and knowledge. And, for training our workforce, our younger workforce, these are people that have seen the hardest questions and been through the hardest transactions and litigation. And they're really additive to our culture, overall, in terms of bringing sort of that senior statesman or stateswoman role, but just a lot of experience. And they're not ready to, as Mary said, they're not ready to hang up, their role or their working role, but they may have been somewhere where there's an exit defined for them, or or something happened. And so, you know, it's also a great way to kind of build the workforce, right? Everybody doesn't have to do it the same way, right? We have a flexible platform. We've been able to give flexibility, and we've had a lot of great additions at our firm, you know, on the lawyer side by trying to find those opportunities where we could really match what we were able to provide in terms of flexibility and, you know, unique work circumstances with somebody else's kind of career goals. So those are all positives to me. Again, it's hard to see negatives other than, you know, risk of positions being, you know, quickly eliminated or the like, which obviously could happen if you're a W-2 as well. So that's sort of our story, and that sort of part-time workforce, I'll call it, has been a huge add to our firm.
Yeah, I think I hit on some of these notes, Amy, but I mean, from my vantage point, if I was sitting down having a cup of coffee that was with somebody that was kind of considering doing fractional work, I would say, you know, do you love entrepreneurship? You know what I mean? Do you love, like, you go to a cocktail party or whatever and you meet an entrepreneur, are you lit up and curious and want to ask all the questions in the world? You know, I think that that's an important consideration, right? Do you love working with these types of businesses? You know, I think the second piece to that is what I alluded to before on, you know, are you comfortable with managing multiple things at the same time? You know, do you like living in that space where you're constantly, you know, juggling, you know, different balls that are in the air that you can't let land? Some people are invigorated by that. Some people probably get exhausted by that idea. And that's okay, but it'll help you opt in or, you know, opt out as you're evaluating whether or not, you know, this is the right type of situation for you.
Great, great insights and advice. So looking toward the future, what are some key trends and emerging areas where you see fractional services going? I think John is a trailblazer in this space and has been working on this a long time. And the momentum has just gained and gained and gained over the past few years. I would love to know, where do you see it going from here? I will start with you, Jessica.
Oh, I think we hit on some of this earlier. You know, it's kind of wide open. I think we're seeing a workforce that's changing how people want to work, how they want to work, where they want to work, how they want to define their own kind of work style. So I think, you know, AI is going to play a role in how, you know, we as a workforce tackle issues and workforce numbers. But I think the possibilities, you know, in all types of areas are out there. I don't know that I see it. It's obviously gained a lot of attention with CFOs and even, you know, in the PR marketing space, Amy, and accounting, generally controllers and other areas, GCs and legal. I think we're just going to see more people in general want to take more control over the kinds of clients they're working with. I think if they're entrepreneurial, they'll like to work with, you know, multiple clients to juggle, be it fast growing companies, and allow them to, you know, really bring their expertise to smaller and growing organizations. And so I think I can't say it's going to be in one certain area. I think we're just going to continue to see that growth kind of everywhere and across the board. We have clients calling us trying to understand, you know, what that means for them if they're hiring these type of workers and what to be, you know, on the lookout for. And that those calls have been accelerating, you know, the last year or so. So I think it's kind of everywhere, and we should, you know, all have our eyes open for this because there's going to be more and more, you know, individuals looking for sort of fractional type both hiring and looking for that type of work as well.
I agree. I think we're going to see it become more mainstream as companies prioritize agility and, you know, it becomes more common conversation. I think it's going to, we'll see it across wider industry reach, right? So not only across more functional roles, but across more industries as well. Within my space, I think we're going to see, and Jessica touched on this, more, be it AI or tech-driven matching processes, you know, which will enable more people who are interested and, you know, more candidates to be matched and connected with companies that need that help and want to do that work. And I think it's going to drive us, you know, as a workforce, even more towards skills-based hiring. as we're writing, what we do, and that's accessible on LinkedIn and shows up in our resumes, and as we're defining ourselves, or the workforce is defining themselves around their skills, to enable that higher tech, matching and connection.
Yeah, Amy, my quick answer would be tip of the iceberg. Again, going back 10, 12 years ago when I kind of started doing this accidentally on the side, I had just a gut feeling that, if I got in the car and, drove down the Eisenhower, or, pick your expressway or even just a major road, you look left, you look right, these businesses are literally everywhere. And back then I think I did a marketing study that I asked a firm to, give me a list of within 25 miles of my home. I think the condition was between 2 million and 40 million at the time. And they gave me back a list that had like 15,000 different organizations on it. And that's up to 40 million. I think the fractional model applies to 100 million and hundreds of millions in terms of size of business. So like if you look just in Chicago, I think there's 50 to 100,000 businesses that fit in this bucket. And if you think about that nationally, you're well north of 1 million different businesses. So like you compare that to the adoption rate of how many of those businesses have actually employed a fractional resource. And it's less than 1%. It has to be. So I'm really excited about it. I think, the last couple of years, there's definitely been momentum in terms of market awareness of the fractional model. And I think that the adoption rate has trickled behind it a little bit, but I think that it's going to be very up and very to the right for an extended period of time.
Great. We're excited to see where it goes. So we're almost out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered from the consultant individual side of things?
I would just add, thinking about it, I was just thinking of it on the last question, what's holding candidates back, right? And what are we going to see, along the tip of the iceberg? I think some of the hesitation is around, I think, Jessica, you mentioned this earlier. Can I make a career out of this? Can this, or maybe it was John, can this be a career? How do I support my family? How do I address, medical benefits and 401k and everything that I know and have defined, as a traditional career? Can I have all of that, in, a fractional or, gig role as well, or something that I'm more in command of? And I think as people become more and more comfortable with that, as they realize that there are companies out there that offer, that type of stability, or, those type of things that can make this more of something that they're looking at as a career rather than in between, or, just on the side. I think that will help increase the adoption, and grow the demand in the market even more.
Yeah, I love John's story that he's like, I accidentally fell into this, right? He found an opportunity. He was able to see the opportunity and not just grow it for himself, but grow it for the workforce that you got at the company. And I think there's a lot of stories like that. People sort of taking the leap, and the original is, I'm going to do this for myself, but they find out there's a lot of interest and a lot of demand. And then, hey, I can create opportunities for person B and C and D. And that's how this stuff happens. And I think we're just going to see more of that, more people, wanting to take the leap. And because there is interest and there is demand, being able to grow their companies around a fractional model in all kinds of spaces, I think is going to be really interesting to watch.
Right.
Yeah, I just say that I'm a pretty big encourager of the push for people that, think that this is for them. Going back many moons ago, I was a, young associate at Arthur Andersen and flying at 10,000 feet, working with the numbers. And now I'm, getting in the midst of the QuickBooks, and solving the problems with rolling up the sleeves and things like that. And, if you love doing that, you love, seeing the fruit of your labor, you love, solving problems and working with people that you can build authentic relationships with, I encourage you to absolutely do it. I've had a blast with it. Like I said, 10+ years that I've been doing it, and every single day I love the new challenge of, meeting a new person, exploring a different type of business that I haven't seen before, and seeing, unique problems that come up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists for such an insightful conversation. And thank you to everyone who attended today. We really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
You.
Thank you.